Chapter 20. Mr. Pym. Alexander Sherbakov was now at least in a dialogue with Mike Rochford, although so far he had continued to reveal nothing at all about an American mole working for Moscow. To protect his identity, the FBI gave him a code name, Mr. Pym. An FBI analyst was credited with coming up with the name, inspired by Magnus Pym, a British spy, double agent, and world-class betrayer in John le Carré's novel A Perfect Spy. Gradually, Rochford established a rapport with Mr. Pym. With the benefit of more Tullamore Dew, the volatile Russian began talking over lunch and dinner about things that had gone wrong in his personal life and his career. He had held senior jobs in the KGB and its successor Foreign Intelligence Agency, the SVR. He had been deputy director of Directorate S, which trained and inserted illegals in the U.S. and other countries. But he complained bitterly about rampant corruption and favoritism in the KGB. Alcoholics and friends of KGB were the ones who got promoted, he grumbled. Rochford would light another cigar and just listen, letting the Russian unburden himself. What was clear, Rochford said, was that he hated that the United States had outspent Gorbachev in the Cold War, and that they lost. He really believed theirs was a better society. Invoking the motto of the KGB, Rochford countered, "You're trying to protect the sword and shield of a society that no longer exists." Sometimes, as they walked the streets of Manhattan, Mr. Pym, ever the KGB man, would try to counterpitch Rochford. He tried to turn the tables on the FBI agent and recruit him. He pointed out attractive women and expensive cars. If Rochford came to Russia, he could have a car like that. Rochford said thanks, but he liked the car he had. By now, a fuller picture of Alexander Sherbakov had emerged. He was bitter at his former service, devastated at what had befallen his country, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and frustrated at what had happened to him personally. Here he was, a former senior KGB official, a deputy director of an important directorate no less, with many years of loyal service to his country's premier intelligence agency, now broke, scrounging for business, trying to peddle painted boxes, and reduced to working for the Russian mob, which was threatening to kill him. When Sherbakov arrived in New York, besides hoping to set up a business to export artifacts, he planned to try to contact two shadowy Russians who were involved in the caviar deal. He hoped they would pay him some of the money he owed to the mafia. But Rochford discouraged him from trying to contact the pair, whose names Mr. Pym disclosed in the hope that the FBI might help him find them. "You don't want to meet these guys," Rochford told him. "You're never going to see the money." There was a reason that Rochford wanted to steer Sherbakov away from the two Russians. The FBI, once it learned their names, had contacted the Immigration Service and obtained the I-94 forms that travelers coming to the U.S. have to fill out. The FBI discovered the two men were already in trouble with the authorities for other shady dealings. "Once we pulled the forms," an FBI source said, "we found they were already on the docket in New York. They were in the court system." Any contact between Mr. Pym and the two Russians could only complicate Rochford's efforts. Although he had wined and dined Sherbakov, and they were getting along better, the ex-KGB man had not produced any useful information in Rochford's quest for the mole. And Rochford was getting heavy pressure from his superiors in FBI headquarters in Washington to end his efforts in New York. It was going nowhere, they said. His quixotic 27 pitches to KGB agents had produced zilch, they reminded him. He was wasting time and FBI resources, they said. During his stay in New York with Mr. Pym, he continually had to fend off sniping from his colleagues at headquarters. At some risk to his career, Rochford rejected the demand that he break off his meetings with Mr. Pym. Perhaps the 28th spy would be the charm.